Hello everyone, thanks for joining me today. Today I want to talk about the structure of the heavens and the earth. This is just a thing I like to get done because it helps us get a visualization of when Christ talks about, or when God or when anyone in the books talks about heaven and earth. You can get a representation of either where they are or what they're talking about in the future or the past. A lot of people won't actually do this. They'll just say, okay, here's heaven, here's earth somewhere up here, and the stars and planets are in here, and that's all you really need to know. Well, that's partly true, but it helps to actually go in a deep dive and to see how Earth and the heavens are actually structured and how they're ranked. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with the beginning. I'm going to be doing some erasing because I'm going to just write what the Bible tells us, and then as it gets more specific, I'll change it, I'll erase it, make more detailed notes, and we can all do it together. So you can follow along or you can just watch, but we're going to start with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So if we just start with that, just start with what we know, right? Because that's the easiest thing to do. So we have heaven, we have earth, right? So that's all we know. We're just going to go with what we know because that's it. All right, so that's for there. That's Genesis 1:1. So if we drop down to Genesis 1 verse 7, right, this is the story of creation. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and morning were the second day, and God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called the seas, and God saw that it was good. Okay, so we have heaven and earth still, but let's be more specific based on what he said. So God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from which were above. So we're going to have a firmament, right? And it's going to divide waters up here, waters here, waters above, waters below. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called the seas. So if we have that's below the firmament, right? He said that. So we can actually draw what we have now is this earth, where we have the continents, right? And the seas. So I think you all know what this is. So we have the earth with the water and the land, firmament and the waters. And the firmament he called heaven. It's verse 8. And God called the firmament heaven. So we can also say this is also called heaven. Okay, so that's what we have based on what he's told us so far. Verse 14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And evening and morning were the fourth day. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. In the open firmament of heaven. So first let's just make this bigger so we can get everything in there. So we have this firmament. Which also is the name of heaven. And in here was, right, the lesser light, the sun, the greater light and the lesser light, moon, and then there were stars. Okay, so we have that. Verse 20, and God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. So there's going to also be an open firmament of heaven, because that's where the birds are going to be, right? Because God said, and God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth, so above the earth, in the open firmament of heaven. So that's where the fowl are. So we got that. Based on everything he's told us, that's what we can get this the diagram we have. So now we can go to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. It is not expedient for me, doubtless to glory, this is Paul talking, I will come to visions and revelations of the Lord. I knew a man in Christ above 14 years ago, whether in body I cannot tell, or whether out of the body I cannot tell, God knoweth. Such an one caught up to the third heaven. And I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body I cannot tell, God knoweth, how that he was caught up into paradise, and heard unspeakable words, which is not lawful for a man to utter. Okay, so right there in verse 2, the end, such an one caught up to the third heaven. Okay, so looks like right here, what do we have? Right, a firmament, also kind of known as heaven, right? We already have one firmament, the open. We have this firmament right here with the stars. But what did Paul talk about? Third heaven. So we need a third one here. So now that we have that, let's like that. Now we have a third one. Well, the firmament divides the waters from the waters, so I shouldn't say that. So, looks like probably here too, right? Because that's when the waters above and waters below. We also have this third heaven. That's what Paul just talked about, right? So we have a third heaven. We have to have a third heaven somewhere. But since we already have what appears to be a first heaven, a second heaven, it would make the most sense to put your third heaven right here. It looks like, so we have 1, 2, 3. So it makes sense that we have this open firmament separated from this original firmament and original heaven. Then we have this third heaven where the waters above the firmament can be. So right there, just based on what the data is giving us, what the scripture says, we have at least 3 heavens. He specifically says third heaven. We already had kind of 2 kind of plotted out for us, so we might as well make them first and second. Then we have the earth below, right? So that's what we have so far. So to make this a little easier to see, a little easier to understand, I'm going to expand this. So now you got this, I'm going to just erase it and make it bigger to put it into more reasonable, I don't know, a sight, so you can understand what I'm talking about here. So let's just draw, this is the earth. Here's some land. Okay, y'all know what that is. So then we have this first heaven here. This is the first. I'm just going to do H, first heaven. This is where the fowls are. So this is where the birds go. Right? This is just the normal atmosphere that you and I are used to seeing when we look up. That's where the birds are. Then we got the second heaven. So this is the atmosphere, you could say, of the earth. That's what I guess scientists would call it, is the Earth's atmosphere. That's the first heaven. The second heaven that's where the sun was. That's where the moon was. I'm not the greatest artist. And that's where the stars were. So what's this? This is outer space. This is the universe. This is essentially everything else that we see physically out in the universe. We can say this second heaven is just the universe, outer space. Right? Because that's where the sun, the moon, that's where the stars are. However many light years away, they're all in this second heaven. They're in the universe. That's this one. So then we have the third heaven here. This is where the waters are. This is where Paul knew this man that was caught up. He also said that there was paradise here. Verse 4, 2 Corinthians 12:4, and how that he was caught up into paradise. So there's a type of paradise up here. I don't think that would surprise anyone. That in the top heaven, there's a paradise. I don't think that's any great revelation. But so this is what we have so far. First, second, third heaven, the atmosphere, the universe, which should also be that original firmament. Right? So we do have the first heaven below that firmament that was talked about. This is also the open firmament, right? Then there's something above that, which is this third heaven. Okay. So now we got that. we can go to Ephesians chapter 4, verses 7 through 10. So Ephesians 4, 7 through 10. But unto every one of us is this grace but unto every one of us is given grace according to the measure of the gift of Christ. Wherefore he saith, He ascended up on high, He led captivity captive, and gave gifts unto men. Now that He ascended, what is it but He that also descended first into the lower parts of the earth? He that descended is the same also that ascended up far above all heavens, that He might fill all things. Okay, so that gives us two things here that I had to put on this board. Is we need the lower parts of earth. So there's something here in the earth, that's the lower parts. We also have the last verse there, verse 10, He that descended is the same also that ascended up far above all heavens. So we already know the all heavens, right? We know there's more than one. That's why it doesn't just say far above heaven, far above all heavens. But right now, that's going to give us the ultimate, the highest place you could go. So we'll do another dash here. Now fit it in, far above all heavens. That's where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. That's obviously, this verse is talking about Christ. When He descended into the lower parts of earth, He then later ascended far above all heavens. So that's where Christ is. So again, we have this earth, first, second, third heaven, and there's also another far above all heavens. So that's as far as you can go. That is the ultimate place. So there's this third heaven, which isn't the farthest. There's the far above all heavens, as talked about here in the verse. I'm not making this up. It's what the scripture says. So we have that. Now, I'm going to tell you for now, we're done diagramming out the heavens. We got first, second, third. We got far above all heavens. Now we can concentrate on the earth and what these lower parts are. So we'll go to Luke 16. And then verses 19 through 26. So it says, There was a certain rich man, which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. And it came to pass that the beggar died, and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. And the rich man also died, and was buried. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water, and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from thence. So, okay, we're going to see what these lower parts are. First off, you all know the story of the rich man and Lazarus. A lot of people will say this is a parable. You might be thinking that yourself. Well, so one thing that would show, is this really a parable, is what are parables used for? Parables use standard objects that you can comprehend to help teach you about something you can't comprehend. That's what a parable does. It helps teach you. So the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, right? Do you know what the kingdom of heaven is like? Can you see it? Can you describe it really? We can't. We don't know what the kingdom of heaven is like because we haven't been there. But a mustard seed, do you know what a mustard seed is like? We know exactly what a mustard seed is. We know, we can describe it, we can look at it, we can tell what you're talking about. So when he uses a mustard seed, or like the faith of a mustard seed, or anything like that, it's using something on earth we can tell, we know what it is, we can understand, to help us understand something else. That's what a parable is. When you use a story or an object that you understand to describe something you don't. If we look at this whole Luke 16, if this is a parable, what is it using to understand, and what is it trying to teach us? So I don't understand. There's nothing that would be teaching it. What do you understand? Hell? Do you understand the torments that you would go through? Do you understand Abraham's bosom? What would that be a parable for? Right? That doesn't make sense. He's talking about death this whole time. These people died and went here. One went here. One went there. You have not experienced them, so you can't understand exactly what hell is like. to then help you understand what something else is, right? Hell is not like a mustard seed. You don't know exactly what hell is. You don't have a great concept, great clarity. You haven't been there. You haven't experienced it. You haven't held it in your hand. So this isn't teaching you one thing by using something that you do understand. There is no teaching here of this is like this. This is similar to this. You can understand this because you understand this. This is not that. This is an actual story where it's telling you exactly what happened. There's nothing in here to relate to something else. If there is, I'd like to know, so help me out, but I just don't see it. So we can take this as an actual story and not a parable. It's not trying to teach you something by showing you this and saying it's like this. He's just saying straight up, this is this. This is what happened. So if we don't take this as a parable, we take it as something real. We have two places here. And it says, the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torments. Okay, so we have two places here. Abraham's bosom. And we have torments. The rich man went to torments, and the other one went to Abraham's bosom. This is and I'm pretty sure this is in the heart of the earth because it says he went down, but we're just going to place it here for now, and we'll get to more proof later. But we have these two places. It also says there was a great gulf in between the two. The last verse, verse 26, and besides all this, between us and you, there's a great gulf fixed. So there is something here, a great gulf. So that whoever's over here can't get over here, vice versa. That all exists. That's there. That's somewhere over here in this earth part. We're going to get to where that is more specifically. So now we have these three things. Abraham's bosom, where the person was comforted. And torments, where the person was tormented. That was the rich man, and the gulf in between. We have these from this story from Luke. So now we go to Matthew. Matthew chapter 12. It says, then a certain of the scribes and the Pharisees answered, saying, Matthew 12, verse 38. So 38. Then certain of the scribes and the Pharisees answered, saying, Master, Jesus, we would see a sign from thee. But he answered and said, unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So we also know that there's a heart of the earth. I'm just going to draw, and this is in the earth, right? So we want to make it clear that this, essentially the earth goes around like this. And here's the heart of the earth, right? That's where your heart is, inside you. So the heart of the earth is inside the earth. So that's a place, and Jesus was in here for 3 days and 3 nights. So we got at least these 4 things here in the earth. Abraham's bosom, torments, the gulf, and the heart of the earth. Okay, so we know that. We'll go to Acts now. Acts chapter 2, verse 30. Therefore being a prophet, so Acts 2:30. Therefore being a prophet, knowing that God had sworn with an oath to him, that the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, he would raise up Christ to sit on his throne. He, seeing this before, spake of the resurrection of Christ, that his soul was not left in hell, neither did his flesh see corruption. Christ's soul was not left in hell. I guess I should have put this over here too. If we go back, that this is hell. So, so if we go back to in Luke, so in Luke 16:23, and it says, and in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. We know that hell is this torments place over here too. That's where hell is, wherever that is. So we know that Jesus, Acts 2:30, 2:31, he, seeing this before, spake of the resurrection, that his soul was not left in hell. So Jesus, for those 3 days and 3 nights, must have been in hell. It wasn't left in hell, 3 days later he rose from the dead. So wherever Jesus was in this heart of the earth must also be there. So let's put this all together. If Jesus was in the heart of the earth, and Jesus was also in hell, this heart of the earth must be that. So we can now erase this and just make it one more clear picture. So in the heart of the earth, I'm just going to, again, just so we can tell what this is. So in the heart of the earth, it's not shaped like a heart. I'm just doing that so we can tell, but that just means it was in the earth, in the center, in the middle, 'cause that's where your heart is, inside you, in the earth, was this great gulf, was torments over here, and in Abraham's bosom. And this is all in the earth. That's why I'm drawing this heart, the heart of the earth. They're inside the earth. So again, it's not shaped like a heart. I'm just showing you this inside the earth. We have that. Christ's soul was not left in hell. So it was in there, but didn't stay in there. It was in there for 3 days and 3 nights. That's where Jesus was. I'll just put Jesus here because that's where he was. Obviously now he's up here. But he was there for 3 days and 3 nights. So finally, we have what I like to show is the full and complete picture. This is the structure of the heavens and the earth. We have the earth, and inside it is Abraham's bosom, place of torments, and a great gulf between the two. And for heaven, we have the first, second, third heaven, and far above all heavens. So, obviously, when it comes to us humans, we can be in here. We've all been in an airplane. Well, not all of us, but most of us have been in an airplane, and we can travel throughout this first place here. Second place, you get in a space shuttle or get on top of a satellite, you can visit here too. But this is the firmament. You cannot go past this firmament. It is blocking, if you read Genesis 1, right? The firmament divides the waters from the waters. This is blocked. You, as a human, cannot go past this. You can't go into the third heaven or far above all heavens. Your flesh cannot do that. That's why the firmament here is to stop anything from passing through and going to this third heaven. So as humans, we can look up, we can see this, we can see the first heaven. We can also look up, during a dark night, you can see the stars, you can see the moon, you can see the second heaven. Can't see the third, can't see far above. Now, in the heart of the earth, we can see the earth. If we were to drill down far enough, would we ever see these people here? Would we see the heart of the earth? Would we see Abraham's bosom, torments, and the people inside? We would not. Even though they are there, we would not actually see them. I want to kind of show you another verse to show you why, that they can still be there even if we can't see them. For most people this isn't an issue, but I just wanted to show it. In Ephesians chapter 3, verse 17, it says, Ephesians 3:17, that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, and that ye being rooted and grounded in love, verse 18, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth, length, depth, and height. Right there. So we have the breadth, length, depth, and height. That's 4. 4 physical dimensions he's talking about here. So usually when you're talking about, if you're trying to put a new closet or a new storage unit in your house, right? You're going to see length, width, and depth. 3 dimensions. That's what we as humans in the flesh work with. Work with 3 dimensions. But here he mentions 4. There's breadth, length, depth, and height. These are all spatial dimensions. I said physical earlier. I should have said spatial. Because for us as humans, we think of the 4th dimension being time. But that's not what it says here. There are 4 spatial dimensions, not counting time, 4 spatial dimensions. So that would lead me to assume that, if we drilled down far enough, we wouldn't see them, even though they are there. But why wouldn't we see them? Because they're in the 4th spatial dimension that we cannot observe. We can't see as humans in the flesh. God talks about 4 spatial dimensions in this verse. Ephesians 3:18, breadth, length, depth, height. They're all spatial. So there's 4 of them for God. We only experience and move around in 3, but that's how we can say that this is actually here, but we can't see it because it's in the 4th spatial dimension. So those people are actually there. I don't want this to be turned into some spiritual, some parable thing. There are people here in the heart of the earth that are in Abraham's bosom or they're in torments. Like they're really there, and it's really in the heart of the earth. It's not just some figurative language in the heart of the earth, but really he means beside it or in heaven. He doesn't. He means in the heart, inside the earth. This exists. And the only reason we can't drill down far enough to see it is because it's another spatial dimension. But regardless, that was just an aside there. Just want to show that. I do want to, the main points were to get the structure of the heavens and the earth done and mapped out so that we can, like whenever we're reading a story of what happens in a heaven or in the heavens or on the earth, we can see, in our minds, oh, okay, so he means this, he means this. We can see where it relates to others. So again, a lot of people don't separate these three heavens out. They think of all of this being just like one heaven, and they, kind of blank out when they see this. Oh, far above all heavens. Oh, that means there's more than one heaven, and he's above even those. So there's even another place to go to. So again, important things to take out here is the first, second, third heaven. There's a fourth place, which is the far above all heavens. There's the earth, and inside the earth is Abraham's bosom and the place of torments, where Jesus was for 3 days and 3 nights to pay for our sins. Then he was resurrected. So, if you stuck with me through this, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I hope this helped you learn something. Thank you.